Hey, so today we're going to be working on a drawing of this piece here. A drawing, or in this case, a technical drawing, is going to be showing dimensionality, and it's also going to be showing how all these parts fit together. It's very useful if you're saying it to some kind of manufacturer or employer, and you can show exactly what you can convey a lot of information without actually having to send the CAD model itself. So you can just export something like this, which, as you can see, shows dimensions of all your parts. It can show how everything fits together and the dimensions of the individual parts as well. This is incredibly useful, but one thing to realize is we're showing with each one of these views, you're trying to show a specific piece of information so that somebody can replicate this entirely. If I give them this image, they can recreate these parts. So you need to think about that when you're choosing your dimensions. So now I'm going to go over here to our workspace here so we can do this ourselves. And then I'm going to go ahead and press the plus button on the bottom left here. And you'll see create drawing. We're going to go ahead and click on that. We're going to ignore all these options and just press OK here. We're going to use the defaults. So first thing it'll ask us is to insert a part or assembly. First thing I want to do is I want to insert an assembly. So I'm going to click assemblies over here on the right. And I'm going to click on assembly 1, because it's the only assembly we have. And it's going to show us a bunch of different, it's going to ask us for a couple things. It's going to ask us for what are we inserting, the orientation, as in, for instance, if you go back to your assembly real quick, you see the orientation cube has these labeled views. It's asking you from which view do you want to look at for. For instance, this is back, this is the top, this is the front, etc., etc. So here we're going to start off from the front. And just a couple more options I want you guys talk about is the explode/position. This is talking about the positioning of your parts. This is only really relevant in a assembly. And the scale. So as you can see, this is scaled down, isn't nearly the same size as the original, but this scale is the default scale that you will see on your part. You can change it as you'd like, but we're going to stick with 1:5 ratio for now. Now I want you guys to click on your build space and drop your picture. This doesn't look like it conveys much information, but that's where we're going to fix that now. We need to show multiple different views of this part. Now in OnShape it'll automatically select the project tool for you, which will then move the camera in relation to your reference image. I'll show you what I mean. So if I go over here to the right of our part, now you'll see it'll rotate my camera to the right of my original reference drawing, our reference drawing being the one highlighted in orange. So now we can see an angle from the right of our part. Now with the project tool still selected, you need to choose your next reference image. So what is going to be the basis to your next image? So if I click here, now if I move my mouse to the right again, it's going to rotate the camera to the right. If I go up and to the right, it's going to show you an angled view. If I go just above, it's going to show me top-down view, etc., etc. And you can just kind of play with it, and you'll see it'll show you all the different views from this. This makes your life much easier. So I'm going to go up and to the right, and click. Now I have an angled view. So now you can go ahead and press Escape to deselect the project tool, and now you can go ahead and move around your parts, and you can put them wherever you'd like. This should be fine, something like this. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to show an exploded view here. How would we do that? So I want you to double click on your drawing, double left click specifically, and you'll see explode/position. If you did the explode properly, you can click on your explode 1. If you do not have it, you can download the file from Blackboard. So click on explode 1, give it a second to load, and you can see, look at that. Now we have a nice exploded view showing us exactly how these parts are going to come together. The next thing I would like to do here is I would like to show some dimensions on these parts. So I'm going to go ahead and, just like your sketches, you can just go ahead and click the dimension tool. Now we are not changing the size of anything like we usually do in our sketches. We are just defining how large each thing is so that somebody who's making it can understand exactly how large each piece is, and they can create it themselves. So now I'm going to show the height of this piece here by just clicking with the dimension tool on this line, and you'll see your dimension will pop out. You drag your mouse to one side and then click again to place down the dimension. And I'm going to show the width as well. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to show the center point of this circle. To do that, I'm going to go over here to the center mark tool. It's a circle with a cross through it. And just click on the border of your circle. You'll see it'll have the little cross in the middle. Now I can go ahead with my dimension tool and show first the diameter of our hole. So by clicking on the border of the circle. Next I want to click on the center of my circle first. As you can see, it'll be highlighted in orange, and then the edge, and now it'll show me the distance between the center of the circle and the edge. Now I'm going to do the same thing here just to show that it's the same. And one thing you're going to want to do is ensure that your dimensions aren't overlapping so that there's clarity. And you can go ahead, and if you would like to move it, you can just click and drag it so that it's nice and clean. So I think that's as much information as we can get from this view. So now we can go on to the next one. And here I just mainly want to show the thickness of our plates. And you can do that very simply by just clicking on the line here. You can see it'll highlight in orange before you click it. So yeah, you can see it's highlighted in orange there. Or you could just click the two lines. Either one works because it's just showing you the distance between the two. And that's going to be 1 inch. The next thing we're going to do here is, while you might think we'd want to dimension this angled view, one thing you have to be aware of is that, for instance, we know this distance to be 10 inches. If I click on this, it's 8.165. This is not going to give me the accurate dimension. It's instead going to give me the distance of the angle, like when it's angled. So it's not going to, you'd never want to really dimension angled parts unless you necessarily have to. So, but if you do want to make it accurate, you have to change it manually to whatever the distance would be. So I could say 10. I could input it manually by double clicking on the dimension. But in general, I'd recommend don't dimension angled parts. It's better to just use this angled part to show everything fits rather than to actually dimension off of. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is I want to dimension our parts specifically, but I think it would be easier if we isolate them from the rest of the drawing. So now I'm going to go up here to the top left and press Insert View. And I'm going to press on the little Insert button. And it's going to ask me, what do I want to insert? I want to start with our gears first. So I'm going to click on the gear. And it'll give you a little preview of what the gear would look like. I think this is a little small, and we could definitely make it bigger, so I could change the ratio now on the View Scale button to, I think, 1:3 would be pretty solid. So now it's a little bigger, and whenever you put it down, when you've changed the scale, it will write the scale underneath because it is different than your default. If you want to see your default scale, just go down here, and you'll see it. It is 1:5. Now we also want a top view of our gear. So I'm just going to click on the project button, click on my gear, and just move the cursor above it. It's as simple as that, it really is. And then now we have two beautiful views of our gear here. And I think to start, I would like to add a center mark to my gear. And doing this is essentially sketching on top of the drawing itself so that I can show relations. So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually choose next to the center mark the 2-point circle center line. What this is going to essentially do for me is I want to show the diameter of these spokes. But a better way to do it would be to actually just draw a circle from the center. Sometimes you have to play with, you have to mess with it. It's a little finicky. Click on the center, drag out, and you'll see this little triangle that's telling you that you're on the, I guess, the tip of your spoke. Click on the triangle when you see it. And then now it's essentially placing the line on the end of your spoke. So I'm going to do it again for the outer one. And now we have our 3 circles. Now I'm going to go ahead with our dimension tool. I'm going to dimension the radius of the inner circle by clicking on the edge of it. And the only reason it's showing radius by default here rather than the diameter like it did down here is because by default it will do radius instead of diameter when it is an arc, because it is not a complete circle. To change that, if you'd like, you can click here and you can press this button here, which will toggle between radius and diameter. You can do it as you'd like. You don't have to, but I think it helps. So now you're going to go back to your dimension tool, and then I'm going to click on my circles just on the border of it, and it will show those dimensions. It's quite simple. So now I know the diameters of all our pieces here. One more thing we can show is, if you'd like, you can put the width of the notch. One thing we know though is that the width and the height of it are the same, but if you'd like more clarity, just in case, you can always put another one down. Now lastly, we just want to show the thickness of the gear. That'll be the last dimension we need. I apologize for that. Notification. Now I'm going to click on anywhere on the top or bottom of my gear. It's not super important. We're just showing the thickness of it. And you can click one more time and you can see the thickness of 1 inch. As you can see, we're almost done here. Only one more step. Now I'm going to press the insert view button. And we're going to be inserting our pin here. And if you want, you can press the little down arrows. It'll help you so you can see the different parts. So I'm going to click on the pin. And it's going to ask me for the direction I want. Now, one thing is, I feel like you should take a good amount of time sometimes thinking about the most efficient way to do these drawings so that you don't have to add so many views. For instance, for this pin, the front view really doesn't tell me much information. So instead, I can go over to the pin here, and I can mess around with the orientation cube to see which view gives me the most information. I think the best one would either be the right or the back. I'm going to go with the right for this tutorial, but I'll let you choose. So I'm going to go for the right. And you can see this is way too small. We have plenty of room on our sheet, so I'm going to go ahead and change the scale to 1 to 2. Plop it down here somewhere on the right. The exact layout of this drawing isn't super important, and as you can really do it however way you'd like as long as you convey the correct information. I'm going to press escape to deselect the project tool, but now I want you to just select your dimension tool. Almost done here. And I'm going to hover over our line. You can see it's showing the dimension we want to show the diameter, or almost the dimension we want. See, that's one thing you have to be careful, because we know this is 1 inch, but it's not showing 1 inch because it's a little hard to see, but it's kind of cut off by the little tip of this notch here. So instead, you could either choose this bottom edge, or you could just choose these 2 lines, and it'll show the proper 1 inch. Yeah, even though I've done CAD for quite a while, it's very easy to make those kind of mistakes. It's just understanding why it's doing that. And you can always move this around to make it a little cleaner. And then I'm going to go back to our dimension tool. I want to then, I think we can dimension the height of our pin. So I'm going to click the bottom and the top. And now we know the height of our pin. It's 3.5 inches. And last things we want to do is just define the notch. So I want to show the thickness of the notch. It is 1 inch. Or I guess the length of the notch, sorry. And now this would be the thickness. So now I'm going to click on the bottom edge here. I think we can bring it down here, I think would be best. And now that is all the dimensions needed for pretty much this drawing. It conveys a lot of information in a very condensed manner while still being easy to read. I really think these drawings are a very valuable tool. You're going to have to do them for your final projects. So one more thing you can do is you'll see it'll automatically put your name, the date. You can add a title, so I could call it, just backspace these lines here, and you could put like gear drawing, and you can put a title, whatever you'd like. You can put the type of material, you can put the finish on it, tons of information that you can put in there. But lastly, you could put a little note by clicking over here. You can go here, type whatever you'd like into there. But I think this is good for now. So in order to export this, all you have to do is click on the 3 little lines here, document menu. You're going to press print. and then you can just press download, and it will download the PDF. You could also do it from here. If you want to print it, you can just print it directly or save as a PDF. The one works. I think that is about all I'd like to cover here. Again, if you don't have these parts, you can find them on the blackboard. I'm not expecting you to make the parts themselves. The whole assembly is on the blackboard. And I think that is about all I would like to cover. Thank you for your guys' patience, and see you guys next time.